All this was done in the name of fighting the war on terror. Already we have a Patriot Act.
Well, that was passed through the Senate, wasn't it?
That's correct. And
and I wasn't sure whether, I didn't have time to check it out, but which way did Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama vote on that?
Opposite. Obama supported the bill completely 100%. He couldn't be more for this man must be exposed for what he truly is. But behind his smile, behind his wonderful appearance, behind his 100% gleaming teeth, there is a Ronald Reagan. And only in time, I promise you this, will we see that he is the best friend of the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industries, the nuclear industry, the coal industry. He is the worst friend to America, but you won't know that now. You'll think he's God's gift to our electorate, and especially the dim-witted Democrats who don't seem to have the intelligence come out of the rain, and they have zero incapacity to understand the reality of this. The real people we should be electing, we won't. The Kucinich, Ron Paul, Ralph Nader, Cynthia McKinney, the John Edwards, we won't touch them. Now, so what I'm watching is this. I'm watching a movie that showed what happens when you throw red meat to the American public. I'm showing how people suspend their capacity for judgment and critical thinking. I'm seeing legislators bend over backwards to have McCarthy be the top dog in Congress. And the only reason he didn't succeed completely is because he went up against some people within the military who fought back, and they won, and that toppled him. But it was not the media that toppled him. It was not Hollywood. It was not industry. It was not even members of Congress that toppled him. They all acquiesced. Now, if he saw a red menace, it was a red menace. Now today, think of what we're doing. In the name of fighting the war on terror, starting in Iraq, we say that we had to go into Iraq to fight terror. I say that these people have created terrorism far greater than any time in American history by actually creating a base for Al-Qaeda and insurgents and others to galvanize their energy and to be a catalyst in Iraq. So I say they've done just the opposite. And where's the American public's sense of indignation at this? And where are the Democrats who have copped out and not ended this war, which they could have and were given a mandate to do? Secondly, I see that instead of bringing peace to the Middle East, this man has brought such a tenuous position that could be cataclysmic if the events that are promoting itself towards invading Iran, which is what the neocons and Cheney want, and the Democrats have funded the secret intelligence bill, which allowed for over $240 million to be used to mount a campaign on the ground against a clandestine campaign against Iran. But if this escalates, we could see a meltdown unlike anything historical in the Middle East, which finally causes Israel to be committed to a full-fledged war all over again. And I can promise you this, friend, this will not be the 1967 outcome. There will be no Israel when this is over as we know it today, if things go to that extent, because you will not have the same alliances. And we just sold Saudi Arabia $40 million in the last 3 years in the state-of-the-art weapons. So these countries have learned lessons, and they will use those lessons against their aggressors or those they perceive as the enemy. And now what have we done to the American consumer when the price of oil, the price of gas goes off the chart, let alone what that will mean for realigning geopolitical and economic affinities around the world. So that's what I see the consequence. And I also see right now, in 1957, they were building and rehabbing the old Japanese internment camps for the American radical. Are you aware of that?
No, I was not.
They had dozens of internment camps. Do you know that right now in the United States, there are internment camps being built that can hold millions of individuals that they say they will need in case martial law is needed, and they passed a presidential decree, an executive order to allow this to occur, and no one's talking about it. So now I've got to ask a basic question. If you are fearing the American public, shouldn't you go back and read the Constitution? Should the public fear the government? Should the government fear the public? Who has the power to exercise their rights when they have that fear? And what has George Bush and his neocons done to our Constitution, to our rights, to having another series of hearings about, are you a loyal American? And I could see the person, let's say the person who should run the new Are you now, or have you been a liberal or progressive, or I could see Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and Michael Savage and some of the other people in America and Coulter all being the head of that committee. I can see, I'm saying this is sarcastically, but I can see the time when we're held to America's loyalty oaths, where our patriotism is questioned if we are against their political maneuvers or their nation-building campaign. So that's why this documentary last night set off a whole alarm that my God, we're back at the Cold War. We're back at McCarthyism. We're back at vilifying people who speak out. We're back at, once again throwing red meat to the public, and sitting back and watching these people who stand up and stand out get ripped apart. And I don't see a single American journalist, a veteran journalist, telling the truth about the dead Iraqi children, the horrors of the Iraq War that we're bringing to them. Instead, I'm seeing this foppish fool, John McCain, going on as if somehow we have a new American manifest destiny. Now, those are my thoughts. Challenge them as you will, sir.
No, well, I agree with a lot of them, and I think John McCain, particularly by saying that America may have to stay there 100 years, is really showing how little he understands about the situation. But I think he was exposed to some extent. You remember when he went to a market in Iraq and walked around and said everything was wonderful, and then it was the media that pointed out that he was surrounded by about 300 American troops and they'd cleared the whole area before he came, and the thing was a complete farce and a put-up show and so on. So I think there are some American journalists, who point out these things. But what my problem with the way this war started was that people accepted this absurd line that people would be welcoming the Iraqis would be welcoming the American troops with flowers and roses and perfume and kissing and all the rest of it in the street. I mean, there was this amazing line before the invasion that if you were against Saddam Hussein, you had to support the invasion, and if you were against the invasion, that meant you were a supporter of Saddam Hussein and you were sort of on the side of the dictator or in the pocket of the dictator. And having talked to a lot of Iraqis before the invasion and then again afterwards, I found that, of course, this was a very, very simplistic and stupid analysis of the situation. I mean, nobody likes their country to be invaded. It was true that Saddam Hussein was not popular. Most Iraqis didn't like him. But that didn't mean that they just said, oh, yes, let's bring in the foreigners to get rid of Saddam Hussein. It's humiliating for any people to see foreign tanks and troops in their streets and to feel that foreigners are the ones who have to change their regime. So people were very conflicted. I spent a lot of time just in the run-up to the war in Amman talking to Iraqis. In Baghdad it was very difficult to talk to them because you had to have a minder from Saddam Hussein who checked what you were asking, and obviously the people wouldn't give you a fair response because they were frightened. In Amman you could talk to Iraqis they were in exile, they were anti-Saddam, they were completely free to say what they thought, and I found that a majority of the ones I spoke to were actually against the invasion, even though they were against Saddam, because they just felt insulted and humiliated by the idea of foreigners coming in. And of course they were suspicious that foreigners would not leave after they got rid of Saddam. They'd carry on in there to get the oil, to run the country, to use it as a military base for attacking places like Iran or Syria, and so that this wasn't some kind of a nice altruistic Christmas present that the Americans were giving to the Iraqis by getting rid of Saddam. This was just the opening shot in an effort to control the Middle East.
Okay, let's go through a few of the issues